जिंदाबाद।
تبدأ القصة في القرن السابع عشر عندما بدأ الإنجليز بالتحكم الاقتصادي ثم الإقليمي في المنطقة الواقعة جنوب المحيط الهندي، مما جعل الإمبراطورية المغولية التي كانت قد سيطرت على الهند منذ أكثر من قرنين تنسحب. إن شهرة الإمبراطورية البريطانية قامت على أساس تفوقها العسكري وعلى أساس سياستها الفعالة، ألا وهي فرق تسد. في نهاية الحرب العالمية الثانية انهارت بريطانيا العظمى، واستبدلت حكومة تشرشل المحافظة والمتأثرة جدا بالإمبراطورية بحكومة عمالية واقعية، وعزمت على الانسحاب من الهند. في عام 1947 نجح نائب ملك الهند الجديد لورد مونباتان بسرعة في حين فشل الكثيرون، وقد كانت مهمته إيجاد اتفاق مع قادة الهند. 3 رجال يقررون مصير 400 مليون شخص و5 سكان الأرض بين أيديهم: المهاتما غاندي ونهرو، القائدان للحزب القوي في الكونغرس اللذان قاتلا لوقت طويل من أجل استقلال الهند. محمد الجناح في رئاسة الجامعة الإسلامية التي تعتبر بأنها الناطق الرسمي الوحيد المصدق عليه باسم المسلمين.
I had the opportunity of meeting some friends, and I might yet find more friends.
طرح جناح فكرة إقامة دولة منفصلة للمسلمين في عام 1940، وذلك إثر تجربة حكومية محلية سيطر عليها حزب المجلس، لأن جناح اعتقد بأن اهتمامات المسلمين لن تكون محفوظة في الهند التي أصبحت مستقلة.
When he was making the case for Pakistan, he was very clear, categorical. He said that this is a country for Muslims. He could have said this will be an Islamic state. He never used those words because that would have meant a different thing. He was clear that Pakistan will be governed through the principles of democracy, that Pakistan is not going to be a theocracy.
Pakistan was a catch-all appeal. It gave hope for many people to be free of all kinds of political and economic oppressions, but it was something also which was very vague. And you could take what you wanted from the Pakistan demand, and that was a great strength because it kept people together on the Pakistan bandwagon, but it was also later to create problems for the fledgling Pakistan state because so many issues were unresolved in terms of political identity, even economic system the state would have.
بدت بريطانيا العظمى غير قادرة على خلق اتفاق بين قادة الحزب في المجلس وبين الجامعة الإسلامية حول مصير الهند السياسي بعد الاستقلال. إن انقسام جنوب المحيط بين الهندوس والمسلمين قد أصبح الآن حتميا.
And then, of course, because of this demand for Pakistan, rioting started. Hindus started killing Muslims on large scale and vice versa. So then the British realized that it was inevitable.
Partitioning provinces may sound easy on paper, but is not easy in real life when you are going to draw lines through villages where people have coexisted. I think we can talk about the collective failure of Indian leadership, Muslim and Hindu, in not being able to realize that they needed to compromise in order to prevent this sort of terrorization of the population. partition and to split and create two states, then to agree on how to work one.
Because the Punjab anyway had been racked by violence from March 1947 onwards, and cities like Lahore and Amritsar had experienced widespread rioting, arson, stabbings. That was the basis on which there was this eventually chaotic two-way flight, purely because of violence and the inability of the state to control this violence. We ended up with probably the largest mass migration of the 20th century. Some people put it as high as 2 million people that died in the violence, and the Punjab was the epicenter of this violence.
ईद वाले दिन नमाज पढ़ के ਅਸੀਂ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਹਿਜਰਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ 'ਚ ਆਣ ਕੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲੀ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਜ਼ਨਸ ਵੀ ਉਧਰ ਖਤਮ ਸਾਡੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਰਟੀ ਵੀ ਉਧਰ ਖਤਮ ਇਨਕੇ ਹਰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਸਾਡੀ ਉਧਰ ਸੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਲਾਕਾ ਸੀ ਉਸ ਅੱਗੇ ਦਾ ਉਹ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਚ ਆਏ ਔਰ ਬਾਹਰ ਰਸਤੇ 'ਚ ਫਿਰ ਕਤਲੇਆਮ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆਈ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਲੋਕ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਸਨ ਡਾਕੂ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਡੀ ਹਮਸ਼ੀਰਾ ਸ਼ਹੀਦ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਸੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਨੋਈ ਸੀ ਜਿਹਦੀ ਟੰਗ ਕੱਟੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ ਹੋਰ ਲੋਕ ਬੇਸ਼ੁਮਾਰ ਛੋਟੇ ਛੋਟੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਨੇਜ਼ਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਟੰਗਿਆ ਗਿਆ 7 ਪਿੰਡ ਦਾ ਕਾਫਲਾ ਵਕਤ
في 14 من آب عام 1947 وجدت باكستان بشكل رسمي وأصبح جناح الحاكم العام الأول فيها والقائد عزام القائد الروحي لدولة جديدة ومنقسمة إلى قسمين منفصلين عن بعضهما ب 1700 كيلومتر من الأراضي الهندية. فمن جهة باكستان الغربية ب4 مقاطعات هي قسم من البنجاب والمقاطعة الحدودية الشمالية الغربية وبالوتشستان والسند وعاصمتها كرات التي تستقبل الحكومة. ومن جهة أخرى باكستان الشرقية وهي أصغر مساحة لكن عدد سكانها أكبر وهي مؤلفة من جزء من البنغال وكل مقاطعة فيها تحتوي على هويات ثقافية ولغوية وأصول مختلفة. إذن فالقادة الباكستانيين يجب أن يكونوا مرتبطين بالمهمة العظيمة مهمة إنشاء أمة انطلاقا من عناصر متفرقة ومن جزئين متباعدين جغرافيا قادة كهؤلاء الذين كانوا في زمن الإمبراطورية البريطانية سيفرضون سلطة قوية ومركزية.
These were the products of the British imperialist world. A certain political elite, they were mostly feudals, and they were not elected through one man, one vote. They were elected because they had certain property or certain economic or certain political standing. These new political leaders of Pakistan, majority of them had left their constituencies in India because it is the Indian Muslim migrants from India to Pakistan. They were the ones who had really voted for Pakistan. It was in their interest not to hold elections because they would not get into the new assemblies.
لن تجري أي انتخابات وطنية خلال أكثر من 20 سنة وذلك لأنه وإن كان جناح ديمقراطيا فإن النخبة المسلمة الجديدة ليس لها أي اهتمام حالي بإقامة الديمقراطية. إذن سيحكم باكستان حزب الجامعة الإسلامية.
I pray to God that this critical moment He may guide us and enable us to discharge our responsibility in a wise and a statesmanlike manner.
The absence of a real organizational machinery for the Muslim League, the challenges of setting up an entirely new center over territories separated by more than 1,000 miles of hostile Indian territory, the fact that the main institutions of the state, bureaucracy and army, had to be split between India and Pakistan. I think all these factors contributed to a scenario where the non-elected institutions, primarily the civil bureaucracy and the military in particular, came to triumph over the politicians.
This was the scene in Karachi at the meeting of the Constituent Assembly. Liaquat Ali Khan moved a resolution concerning the Pakistan national flag and handed one round.
The areas which became Pakistan were often the more backward areas, and areas of British India which had been acquired not for trade but for strategic reasons. Which meant that there was this sort of authoritarian overhang in these crucial areas of what was to become Pakistan, so that democratic politics, political institutions were much less developed, and it was more a bureaucratic authoritarian state system which the Pakistan state eventually inherited from the traditions of these regions.
ويضاف إلى هذه المشاكل المؤسساتية مشاكل إقليمية، فحدود باكستان ليست دوما نهائية. في الواقع إن البريطانيين لم يكملوا تقسيم الحدود، فبعض الدول التي يرأسها الأمراء لا يزال عليها أن تختار بين الهند أو باكستان، وهذا حال كشمير. كشمير هي منطقة ذات أغلبية مسلمة ويرأسها مهراجة هندوسي، منطقة تبلور حتى اليوم التوترات بين الهند وباكستان.
The Maharaja of Kashmir was in a very peculiar position. He was a Hindu, an autocratic Hindu ruler heading a Muslim majority state. Not only was it a Muslim majority state, but it was right on the boundary of India, what was about to become Pakistan. So he dithered.
فالهند منعت سابقا وبالقوة بعض الدول الهندوسية بغالبيتها والتي يقودها أمراء مسلمون من أن يضموا باكستان. عندما تأتي لحظة الخيار فإن باكستان تعتبر بأن كشمير من الطبيعي أن تعود إليها.
So Pakistan decided to organize some tribal lashkars, people from the tribal area with guns, to go and capture Kashmir, because this was our police action in a way.
What was the Maharaja to do? He appealed to the Indians for help. They said, we'll only help you if you accede to India. And in his panicked state, of course, that's what he did.
باكستان بحد ذاتها لا تقبل هذا الدمج بالقوة، فباكستان ترفض أن تسقط كشمير في أيدي الهنود. بالنسبة لجناح فإن وضع الهند في كشمير هو محط خصام تام وبسيط حول وجود بلاده، وهكذا بدأت أولى الحروب الأربعة ضد الهند.
And gentlemen, this is the tomb of father of the nation, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He is the man who created this country on 14th August 1947. But in 1948, he died in this very city. And he was buried here.
People often say that if Jinnah had lived longer, his vision of Pakistan could have been established much more strongly than it actually was.
So, gentlemen, now you have come to the actual grave.
في 11 من أيلول من عام 1948 عندما توفي جناح تحطم الباكستانيون بسبب غياب والدهم المؤسس القائد عزام.
Jinnah's more expansive vision of Pakistan wasn't necessarily shared by many people who had supported the Pakistan movement and who indeed may have had a much narrower Islamic identity for Pakistan. There wasn't in any sense a clear ideology or blueprint for the future of Pakistan. And then of course political developments themselves impacted upon Jinnah's vision.
فقد الباكستانيون قائدهم الذي لا يعوض عندما ثارت الحرب ضد الهند في كشمير. في الأول من كانون الثاني عام 1948 فرضت الأمم المتحدة وقفا للنار عندما كانت الهند تسيطر على الصراع، في حين أن باكستان تسيطر على النصف الشمالي أي آزاد كشمير، أما الهند فقد سيطرت على النصف الجنوبي أي الجامو وكشمير.
UN organized a ceasefire and called for a plebiscite to ascertain the wishes of the people. India never organized that plebiscite and decided that might is right. We have the Kashmir, we are stronger, we are going to keep it, you can't take it from us.
شعر الباكستانيون آنذاك أنهم مخدوعين وضحايا ظلم تاريخي سيسعون جاهدين لإصلاحه.
That all contributed to making the military sort of center stage in the whole security process. And it did get an inordinate share of national resources to develop and get weapons and all, because we were really starting from scratch after partition. So a lot of that did contribute to the military becoming strong, but that a strong military was needed.
بعد 10 سنوات من الوجود الفوضوي لم يتم إصلاح المشاكل المؤسساتية، فلا يوجد حكومة منتخبة ولا دستور، وهكذا فإن الجيش هو المؤسسة الوحيدة التي تم إنشاؤها والتي تطبق النظام. في عام 1958 استلم قائد الجيش الجنرال أيوب خان السلطة، وأصبح الأول في سلسلة طويلة من الدكتاتوريين العسكريين.
It is Ayub Khan who opened the floodgates, you see, and he set a bad precedent. And the result is every other chief of army staff is following Ayub's bad example. History will never forgive Ayub Khan for that. He committed the original sin, you see.
He was certainly no Democrat. He wanted, I suppose, to establish Pakistan perhaps a little bit along the lines of modern Turkey as a Muslim state which was a modernized, relatively secular state. And there was considerable economic growth during the Ayub period, but the problem was that this growth only went to a very limited number of people. And there's often the talk of the 22 families where most of the wealth went. And that was a factor, along with his lack of legitimacy, for his eventual downfall.
His main constituency was military. The way he used his being the president for strengthening Pakistan Army is a very important factor in terms of how Pakistan Army ultimately became the super political party in Pakistan.
في عام 1965 إثر هزيمة عسكرية للهند مع الصين فكر أيوب خان بالاستفادة من الضعف الهندي وحاول استعادة القسم الهندي من كشمير. أطلق الحرس القديم من الجيش الباكستاني عملية سرية وانتظر دعما تلقائيا من الشعب الكشميري ذو الغالبية المسلمة، لكن هذا لم يحدث.
They had done no homework because such a resistance from within doesn't build up like that. Would not create that response from the people of Kashmir, with the result that we got involved with a major war with India.
جواب الهند كان متعصبا وقطعيا، فوصلت جيوشها إلى أبواب لاهار وباضطراب، ورغم الدعم الذي قدمه له الصينيون فقد تردد أيوب خان أمام خطر أن يستمر الصراع مع الهند حتى النهاية.
Chief of Army Staff, Field Marshal Ayub Khan, he got so involved in the day-to-day affairs of the state that he forgot to ensure that the war plans were really workable. We could have won the war, which we did not.
بقدر ما كانت الولايات المتحدة بعيدة للمجيء والمساعدة فقد أعلنت حياديتها، مما زاد في عزلة باكستان وهذيانها. التحالف المهم مع الولايات المتحدة والذي ترسخ بعدة معاهدات تمت خلال الحرب الباردة بدا لمصلحة طرف واحد.
Pakistan after 1965 had a little bit of qualms about relationship with America because they did not come to our help in 1965. They rather starved us of the munition that was required there. So the relationship began to sour in 1965.
في كانون الثاني في السنة التالية وبفضل الوساطات السوفيتية قبلت الهند بالعودة إلى خط وقف النار الذي فرضته منظمة الأمم المتحدة في عام 1949 وقد جعلت الدعاية الإعلامية الشعب يعتقد بأن هذه الحرب ستسمح أخيرا باحتلال كشمير بأكملها، لكن لا يوجد شيء من هذا القبيل. شعر الباكستانيون بأنهم قد خدعوا وغرقت البلاد في الفوضى. في باكستان الغربية قاد حزب الشعب الباكستاني المظاهرات في حين سيطر الوطنيون البنغال على الأحداث في باكستان الشرقية. في عام 1969 فقد أيوب خان سمعته بسبب خسارته العسكرية وانتقلت كامل الصلاحيات إلى الجنرال يحيى خان الذي أتى بعده. وقد تحملت باكستان لمدة 22 سنة الدكتاتور العسكري الثاني. لا يستطيع الجيش بمفرده أن يضم حركة الشعب نحو الديمقراطية.
We were very full of enthusiasm and we were very excited when the first free, fair, impartial election was held in Pakistan. This was 1970. And when the result came out, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto emerged as the leader of the single majority party in West Pakistan. In East Pakistan, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman just swept, the election.
لكن باكستان ومنذ وجودها أدارتها وبشكل استبدادي سلطة مركزية في الجزء الغربي منها. في الشرق تعتبر باكستان الشرقية خاصة بالمصادر والكميات السياسية. إن هذا الشعور باللامساواة سبب تراكما للتوترات التي تهدد بالانفجار.
Their economic, political rights were denied to them. Democracy was not there to take people to the table and decide the issue for themselves. So collectively, when you take all these factors into account, it created an ideal ground for a movement to be started in East Pakistan.
لقد أرجحت نتائج الانتخابات الموقف لصالح سيطرة إسلام أباد، فلو أن ذو الفقار علي بوتو فرض نفسه في باكستان الغربية فإن منافسه في باكستان الشرقية الشيخ مجبور رحمان قد ربح مقاعدا أكثر منه بمرتين، وهذه نتيجة تستطيع أن تمنحه شرعية كاملة لينقل حكومة البلاد إلى دهاكا العاصمة الشرقية. لكن في نظر إسلام أباد فإن الفيدرالية التي يدافع عنها الشيخ مجبور رحمان أطلقت الأشباح التي تحوم حول انفجار البلاد.
Sheikh Mujibur Rahman realized no matter what his mandate, and no matter what his majority, the army of Pakistan will not allow him to exercise that power, To function as the Prime Minister of undivided Pakistan was just not on, And therefore, after election, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman lost faith and lost interest in an undivided Pakistan.
The army then turned to military crackdown and regarded Bengali aspirations as merely a law and order situation. And that eventually led to a civil war developing.
الهند تغذي الصراع كونها تقدم الملجأ للقادة الوطنيين البنغال وتدرب قواتهم العسكرية. أصبحت الهند باكستان أيضا، وذلك بسبب ملايين اللاجئين الذين يعبرون الحدود هربا من الحرب وقمع الجيش. هذه الحرب المدنية تأخذ مدى يتجاوز الحدود الباكستانية، لكن بدلا من أن يجد الجنرالات الباكستانيين حلا سياسيا فإنهم قد قرروا أن يقمعوا شعبهم بعنف في باكستان الشرقية، محدثين حماما من الدماء. عدة مئات من آلاف الأشخاص قد قتلوا.
I saw hordes of Bengalis, civilians, leaving East Pakistan, trekking towards the border with India. When I came back to West Pakistan and I met Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, I told him, I said, I have seen the military operation in Dhaka. I think we have lost East Pakistan.
India moved its troops on a regular basis into what was then East Pakistan in the last week of November 1971, and it started a war. By 12th and 13th of December, India had captured large parts of what was then East Pakistan, and on 16th, Pakistan armed forces had to surrender because there was no other option.
ربحت باكستان وانفصل القسم الشرقي ليصبح أمة جديدة مستقلة وهي بنغلاديش، وقد جرحت البلاد بهذا الانقسام الثاني. بعد 25 سنة من وجودها لم تستطع باكستان أن تحافظ على جملة أراضيها. لن تستطيع أن تدعي بعد الآن بأنها البلد الوحيد الذي يأوي المسلمين في جنوب المحيط. سقطت رؤية جناح كقصاصات الورق.
بعد نصف عام من مباحثات متعثرة، العراق بلا حكومة جديدة، والصراع للوصول إلى سدة الحكم على أشده في ظل تصعيد أمني خطير. متى ستنتهي أزمة تشكيل الحكومة العراقية؟ وهل للأطراف الإقليمية يد في استمرارها؟ سلسلة مقابلات مع أبرز السياسيين وأكثرهم تأثيرا في المشهد السياسي العراقي. من سيحكم العراق مع سهير القيسي، من السبت إلى الثلاثاء 7 على شاشة العربية.
أن تبقى مطلعا على كل ما يجري في العالم مهمة مستحيلة. جوال العربية هو اختيارك لتبقى على اطلاع بآخر الأخبار العالمية والعملية والرياضية. للاشتراك أرسل رسالة SMS فارغة للرقم المرادف لبلدك. ولمزيد من المعلومات زوروا موقعنا العربية.net.
في مصيبة كاملة أجبر الجنرال يحيى على الانسحاب. إن ضياع باكستان الشرقية أدى إلى انقسام الجيش الذي أجب عليه أن يتخلى عن السلطة للمدنيين. من أنقاض هذه الدكتاتورية العسكرية المهانة ظهر قائد جديد وهو ذو الفقار علي بوتو. تم انتخابه وهو يمثل نظرة أصولية جديدة للبلاد.
Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had a love relationship with the people of Pakistan, and we were all very hopeful. He turned defeat into victory, and he mesmerized the people of West Pakistan.
Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was indeed a member of the landed stock in the province of Sindh, and this, I think, helped to explain his very autocratic approach to governing Pakistan when he became its leader in 1971. Mr. Bhutto was a demagogue.
He introduced Islamic socialism in Pakistan, and his slogan was Roti Kapra Makan, food, clothes and shelter. It had a magical effect on the people of West Pakistan.
We all used to have these mouse caps. Socialism was in great fashion, and everybody wanted to be a socialist was something to feel proud of. He was very confident and a man of great vision. He was one of the most outstanding leaders that this country has produced.
And Bhutto came, nationalized 10 basic industries, banks, insurance companies, and that kind of slowed down our progress. Not that socialism inferior inherently, but we didn't have the political infrastructure of socialism. So we had what you call bureaucratic socialism, in which civil servants come and manage industries. So we didn't have the discipline of capitalism, and we did not have the political system of motivation of socialism.
باستثناء أنه بالنسبة للإسلاميين تعتبر الاشتراكية ضد الإسلام، والاشتراكيون هم غير أوفياء، لكن الأولوية بالنسبة إلى ذو الفقار علي بوتو هي حل المشكلة المؤلمة ل90,000 من سجناء الحرب الذين ما يزالون في الهند. في تموز من عام 72 التقى ذو الفقار علي بوتو بأنديرا غاندي للتفاوض من أجل السلام.
Bhutto told Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India, I would very much like to come to a settlement on Kashmir, but if I did so publicly, I would be forced out of office. And believe me, madam, my successor would be much less to India's liking than I am. Now, it is widely said that there was a secret agreement on Kashmir by which the Pakistanis consented to the ceasefire line or the line of control which divided Indian Kashmir and Pakistan Kashmir, that line to become an international boundary, which is all India really wanted.
لم تطرح مسألة الاستفتاء في كشمير في هذا اللقاء، وكذلك مشكلة سجناء الحرب، وكان على بوتو أن يتصدى للنقد الذي تعرض له بسبب ذهابه إلى الأعداء.
The breakup of Pakistan greatly undermined the reputation of the military, and they had no choice but to surrender power. However, with the passage of time, the military was able to revive its position. One reason was that Bhutto used the military to pursue his political agenda in the Balochistan province.
كانت السلطة السياسية متمركزة دوما في بنجاب، لكن الإخلاص للسلطة المركزية لم يكن موجودا في المناطق الأخرى في باكستان، كذلك في بالوتشستان. تقول التقاليد بأن على رؤساء القبائل أن يفرضوا العادات والقوانين، لكن بوتو حدد سلطاته المحلية. في شباط من عام 73 أرسل الجيش ونظف الحكومة المحلية المنتخبة ديمقراطيا في بالوتشستان، في حين أن حزبه كان في الوقت عينه يفرض قوانينه في السند وفي المقاطعة الحدودية في الشمال الغربي. أظهرت الحرب في بالوتشستان بعد فقدان باكستان الشرقية مباشرة لأي حد كيف أن وحدة البلاد تبقى غير مكتملة بشكل قدري.
All power was concentrated in the hands of the Prime Minister. The political parties in Pakistan were not in favor of a presidential form of government because there is a danger that it might be transformed into a dictatorial system. But he was a very powerful Prime Minister, And Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had this authoritarian, dictatorial streak in him.
حافظ بوتو على قسم كبير من الميزانية العسكرية الوطنية، في حين أنه بقي متحذرا وأنشأ قواته الخاصة شبه العسكرية للسيطرة على معارضيه. يبدو واضحا أن الاستبداد قد تسجل في قدر باكستان. وفي هذا السياق قرر بوتو أن يجعل من باكستان قوة نووية. لذا تقرب بوتو من الصين ومن ليبيا ومن كوريا الشمالية، وذلك لأن الحظر الأمريكي على الأسلحة الفعالة منذ حرب عام 65 أجبره على البحث عن مصادر أخرى. قطع بوتو علاقاته مع الدول الإنجليزية وانسحب من منظمة حلف جنوب شرق آسيا، وهذا يخالف الغربيين، لكنه رفع شعبيته في بلاده. لقد عرف عن نفسه بأنه الناطق الرسمي باسم العالم الإسلامي بغية تأكيد شخصه كقائد للعالم الثالث.
Bhutto, he organized this Islamic summit. I was in Lahore and I saw it, I saw it. He took full advantage of the presence of all powerful heads of state in the Islamic world. Saudi Arabia, I think Faisal was there, Gaddafi was there. They were all there, and they helped him. They helped him financially.
تزامنت القمة مع استراتيجية جديدة لمنظمة أوبك القوية جدا في سوق النفط، وقد تحدث بوتو عن قنبلة ذرية إسلامية وعن الدولار الناتج عن بيع النفط والذي سيتدفق على باكستان. لكن في الكواليس كانت تجري مفاوضات أخرى سرية بين الصين والولايات المتحدة، كان القادة الباكستانيون يلعبون دور الوسيط فيها منذ سنتين.
He was not going to allow anything, to spoil his relation with the Americans, No, he was too intelligent for that, He knew that after, the loss of East Pakistan, Pakistan desperately needed, the United States of America.
I was in Washington. I had gone immediately after the fall of East Pakistan to get arms from United States of America. We got everything what we had asked. President Nixon went out of his way to deliver the arms in Tehran because there was embargo on Pakistan. We could not get the arms directly.
لقد كان ذو الفقار بوتو مدركا للخطر الذي يمكن أن يسببه الجيش في الحياة السياسية الباكستانية، لذلك بحث عن قائد عام للدولة يكون خبيرا بهذه القضية، فاختار الجنرال ضياء الحق.
Zia al-Haq was somewhat down the list. He was not the most senior officer available. But he was a man who seemed humble and obedient, and Bhutto came to the conclusion, which he of course regretted for the rest of his life, that this was the man who could fill that bill.
عندئذ اتخذ بوتو الواثق جدا في شعبيته قرارا سيقوده فيما بعد إلى السقوط. بدأ كل شيء بتقرير مزيف من الأجهزة الأمنية يطلب منذ الفقار بعد تسمية الجنرال ضياء الدين في نيسان عام 76 بالمشاركة بالانتخابات بحجة أنه لا يبدو أي حزب في المعارضة قادرا على هزيمته.
The word went out that the boss wants a big win. So everyone tried to make sure, through all kinds of rigging, that the Pakistan People's Party that Bhutto headed won a handsome majority in their districts. This led to what can only be called an idiotic series of results. There were areas where no candidate of Bhutto's PPP could hold a meeting because opposition to Bhutto was so great. And when the returns came in, these areas were going, 95% for Bhutto's candidates. And it made the election look like a travesty.
Bhutto would have won the election anyway. But the fact is that they overplayed their hand, with the result that the religious combined went out on the street.
That very juncture, Pakistan National Alliance, or PNA, came into being. It consisted of 9 political parties, including Jamaat Islami. And then we launched a movement against Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, against his rigging and his tactics against his enemies. So that was the platform of PNA.
Bhutto had also alienated significant sections of Labour and the intelligentsia. Labour, because of labour laws and also the crackdown on labour soon after coming into power. The intelligentsia in terms of his record on human rights and his record on freedom of the press.
اقتنع بوتو بأن الولايات المتحدة تتآمر مع المعارضة لإسقاطه، فطلب من رئيس دولته العام الجنرال ضياء الحق بأن يؤسس القانون العسكري. لكن وفي الوقت الذي شلت فيه الاضطرابات البلاد، أصدر المجلس الأعلى القانون العسكري لا دستوريا معارضا كل الاتجاهات، فقرر بوتو تنظيم انتخابات.
In that event, I will be justified to dissolve the National Assembly.
لكن ما يزال الوقت باكرا. في 5 من تموز من عام 77 انقلاب عسكري جديد، استلم الجنرال ضياء الحق السلطة وانقلب على بوتو.
When I got up, I'm an early riser, and I heard the news, that the civilian government of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto had been toppled, and the military had taken over. And we didn't know who Ziaul Haq was. But in the very first meeting, Ziaul Haq appointed me as his interior secretary, responsible for internal security, and law and order and everything. I realized that we were dealing with a different kind of man now.
أراد ضياء الحق أن يصنع هوية جديدة لباكستان. اعتمد الانقلاب على ظهور الأصوليين الإسلاميين الذين عبروا عن أفكارهم في الحملة الانتخابية. دعا ضياء الحق إلى ولادة جديدة للإسلام لتحويل باكستان إلى جمهورية إسلامية مثالية.
He said Pakistan was made in the name of Islam, and he pursued that relentlessly. Suddenly, you saw people belonging to religious groups visiting the presidency, meeting Ziaul Haq, and being entertained by Ziaul Haq. He was cultivating the religious groups, and he wanted to develop a constituency of his own, you see.
أصبح بوتو حقا كبش المحرقة لهذا الهيجان الوطني بقيادة العسكريين. في أيلول عام 77 اتهم بالتآمر واغتيال أحد السياسيين في المعارضة. احتفلت الأحزاب الدينية والجامعة الإسلامية بتوقيف بوتو وطالبت بنفيه. دام حكمه 18 شهرا.
He was convicted by the Supreme Court by a narrow majority, and many observers said it was pressure on the justices by the Zia-ul-Haq government that led them to go for the death penalty. My own view was that Zia was determined to eliminate him, that Zia recognized that as long as Zulfikar Ali Bhutto remained alive, whether he was in jail, whether he was in exile, he would remain a mortal threat to the general.
Zulfikar Ali Bhutto never got a fair trial. They were determined to convict him. I was the Secretary Interior at that time. On the basis of evidence that was produced in the court against Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, no court in any civilized country could convict him of murder. But he was convicted, The appeal went out to the Supreme Court. But the courts were now subservient to the military. A mercy petition was filed. I processed that mercy petition. Jah had one look at the summary. Without reading it, he rejected it. It was within his power to commute his death sentence. You know why he didn't do it? He told me, and I quote, Reza Saab, it is either his neck or mine, you see. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto has to die. The night he was hanged, it was a terrible night. It was a terrible night. I felt suffocated and difficulty in breathing, because there was a tremendous pressure on my heart. He couldn't have walked to the gallows. It was very slippery. So the jail authorities, they offered, to take him on a stretcher, which he accepted. But I must say that Zulfikar Ali Bhutto met his death very bravely. On the scaffold, he did not break down. He did not collapse. He died in a very dignified manner.
Well, I don't want to say much. I came just to tell you that was the personal tragedy. And they've tried to break our father. They've tortured him for 2 years. They couldn't do that. They tried to ruin his political name, and now they've killed him. We have nothing to be ashamed of. They have buried a martyr today.
We were very tense. We didn't know what might happen. We didn't know if people would react. But deathly silence. No reaction. Of course, military was present everywhere, and Ziaul Haq could be ruthless.
اسطنبول عشق المكان.
شي بيشرح الأرض. هنالك دائما سبب للاستمتاع بالسفر مع طيران.
Carolina Herrera. CH Men, the new fragrance for men by Carolina Herrera.
طيران الناس ما يضيع وقتي. هنالك دائما سبب للاستمتاع بالسفر مع طيران ناس.
جو، جمال وحضارة. تركيا.
بدت سلطة الجيش حتمية أكيدة. فضل ضياء الحق تطبيق العسكريتار على الاقتصاد ليصبح أكثر قوة وللسيطرة عليه أكثر، وقد استخدم طبعا أسلمة القوانين كطريقة فعالة لتنظيم الجيش ولدعم سلطة الدولة ولإسكات المجتمع المدني.
He changed the recruitment criterion. Rather than being asked what is the capital of Egypt, they were asked, okay, can you tell us the 32nd verse from a certain religious text? Ziaul Haq changed the whole nature of the military. If you have a longer beard, you had more chances to get promoted. He encouraged hypocrisy in military, and that had a terrible impact on the military.
Zia injected Islam in the administration of Pakistan. We were not used to this. I think he exploited Islam.
General Ziaul Haq was the first person who, for political reasons, hijacked the religion. Because the way he introduced some of the very strong, very radical religious laws opened up the way for the religious leaders who wanted their dogmatic, very radical, short-sighted and a tunnel-visioned legal framework for Pakistan.
He focused on the form rather than the spirit of Islam. He brought about rules at the level of the state where prayers became compulsory. Then, zakat, which is the charity that you give on your income. He made it compulsory that on the 1st of Ramadan, the banks would close and deduct zakat from people's accounts. Now, this is between God and the Muslim individual. It has nothing to do with the business of the state at all.
A lot of the laws were essentially reflective of the obscurantism of Pakistan's religious groups. There was no way Ziaul Haq could change the economy significantly or political life significantly. So the laws that were made were essentially laws about personal lives. And amongst them, one of the most difficult laws for a person of a contemporaneous approach to the world to accept are the hudud ordinances.
I was in the cabinet when this law was being debated, It was debated for hours, There were all these religious experts and heads of religious groups and parties. He were invited to the cabinet and they explained the Sharia law and the Islamic law and what kind of a law we should have. And it went on for hours and hours and hours.
And one of the very controversial clauses in it was that all sex outside of marriage was made punishable, and of course rape was also punishable in the same section. With the result that a woman who got raped, if she went to file a case or a complaint, and being a male-dominated society, if the police officer, investigating officer, or the court felt that maybe perhaps she consented, she was actually accused of sex outside of marriage and imprisoned.
It enabled men to use the charge of adultery to punish women, and it resulted in a large number of prosecutions. And at one time there were thousands of women who were charged under the various provisions of the Hudud ordinances. Unfortunately, the Hudud ordinances still exist, even though there has been a lot of rhetoric over time to remove them.
When Ziaul Haq started with his Islamization process, it was not only laws, it was policies every day. A new threat, a new issue, and it was all very anti-women and religious minorities. So women were getting together and we would sign petitions, write to the press, but we got fed up because we were not being heard. And finally, many of us decided that it's time now to go to the streets. See, look at the way they're beating the women. They're pinning her down. That's me there. She tried to beat me with this and I pulled it out of her hand. See?
Islam has a very egalitarian system which places tremendous emphasis on equality of opportunity. Now, instead of concentrating on that, Ziaul Haq picked up the criminals. That if somebody is caught stealing, then his hand must be cut, and things like that. This, of course, was like music in the ears of the religious groups. That for the first time after 1400 years, here is a man, he has the gun, and he is going to enforce the Sharia. This is great.
في عام 83 كان على ضياء أن يواجه أول تمرد ضده حركة لإقامة الديمقراطية، وقد امتدت في كافة أرجاء البلاد. اتهم ضياء الهند بإثارة هذه الاضطرابات، واتهم هذه الحركة بأنها ضد الإسلام. في كانون الأول من عام 84 وليتأكد من أنه سيبقى الرئيس، قبل باستفتاء حول سؤال بسيط: هل يدعم الشعب برنامج أسلمة الحكومة والفكرة الإسلامية في باكستان؟ والحملة التي كانت بقيادة المعارضة للإجابة بلا كانت مراقبة، وكانت النتيجة أن 97% يقبلون ويريدون منح كامل السلطات للجيش ولقائده لمدة 5 سنوات قادمة.
باكستان زندباد.